In other news now, the Standing Committee on Public Accounts, that's SCOPA, is continuing with its site visits, checking on governance, procurement practices and financial stability at the Passenger Rail Agency of South Africa, that's PRASA. Now, it suffered losses to the tune of 100 million rand already. My colleague, eNCA reporter Govan Whittles, following that story for us this afternoon. Let's cross to him now live at the PRASA House for the latest. Good afternoon, Govan. How are things looking where you are currently? I mean, this site visit, this oversight visit by SCOPA has been going on for over a day now.
So they've done much of the legwork, and they're pretty much done with that, Bradan. We're at the PRASA headquarters now, right next to Park Station. And at the moment, the PRASA board is preparing for that meeting with the SCOPA members on one side, and the SCOPA members themselves having lunch and a final caucus, just rounding up all the issues that they've picked up during these oversight visits to the different sites. And then after lunch, they'll demand some accountability. SCOPA has already made it clear that they want concrete answers from PRASA's board regarding consequence management and who has been held accountable for certain faults that they picked up, particularly the state of the stations, and say that they won't hold back any questions in that meeting. But they've also been impressed by the state of PRASA's depot, particularly the Gibela factory where the trains are manufactured, and the manner in which PRASA has been able to secure its depot sites where the trains are. Most of the criticism has been against PRASA's failure to secure the train stations. And a little earlier, they went to the Braamfontein depot where they saw where the main parts of the trains are being stored, but were also pointed towards a fence where they believe a syndicate has been entering the depot to strip some of the older trains that need maintenance that are piled up there at the Braamfontein depot. So there's been a mix of good and bad. Certainly was yesterday was certainly much better than today. Today that we've seen some staunch criticism from the MPs regarding PRASA's management of the stations, and that's because they've been looking at one of the most crucial lines from Naledi to Park Station, and they found the train stations along the way in disarray, and all the way down in Naledi they found that PRASA is managing the upkeep of the infrastructure but isn't able to get people back to the stations because they fail to secure it and fail to ensure that the trains are arriving and leaving on time.
Yeah, what about the major concerns really that SCOPA has?
Well, they're around safety and vandalism and PRASA's apparent failure to safeguard its infrastructure at the stations and at some of the more important places where the infrastructure is kept. And the big question that's been raised by SCOPA here is, what did PRASA do while these places were being vandalized and stripped of this crucial infrastructure? And the repetitive answer we've got from PRASA has been that around the same time they cancelled the security contract, South Africa went into a lockdown, so the period between them appointing new security guards, these in-house PRASA security guards that we've seen at the stations in Mabopane and at Park Station, and the cancellation of those old security contracts, that's when the vandals, the syndicates and criminals ran wild at PRASA's different stations and began to strip its infrastructure. We don't know whether that answer will suffice for the MPs, but we will be sure to find out after the break when they're in that meeting with the board. Let's have a look now at what one of the SCOPA members had to say about the state of the Crossvena station, which the trains don't stop at anymore because the platforms are in no condition to receive passengers.
The station is completely trashed. They're not using it. They're not able to use it. The cables have been dug out. What's very worrying is the overhead cables have been removed, which means you can't run the electric trains along the line at all. So what PRASA is doing is they're running diesel trains along here, which doesn't need the electrics. So the whole place is utterly decimated and it's been stripped. And it certainly isn't something that will be able to be reinstated anytime soon. And at the end of the day, it's the people here in the communities that suffer who aren't able to actually access work opportunities. I think they're certainly taking us to the stations that are functional. There also are indications of a big clean-up having happened relatively recently, like yesterday and this morning. Stations like this are what we really need to come and see, because now we actually see the real state of a great deal of these stations. Instead of the ones that they are managing to keep going, we're now seeing what's really happening with this line, and it's very worrying indeed.
A member of the SCOPA delegation that's on a site visit since yesterday. across different parts of PRASA. And this afternoon, as Govan Whittles was reporting there, they are at PRASA House in Braamfontein in Johannesburg, and they're going to meet with the board to discuss some of their concerns around what's happening at PRASA.